They called him Mr. Vizier. He had a keen interest in helping kings and queens alike. His journey began when he met this counselor duck guy. That was what he called him until he learned his true name. This counselor duck guy suggested that he meet King Baldwin, who was a decent orator and could rally a few peasants when needed. Under his command, high morale had a positive effect on troop damage. With this in mind, Mr. Vizier began building an outpost for him. Counselor Duck Guy told him that empires are built upon strong economies, and the first thing to do was to place a water well. The good thing was, it didn't require anything other than manual labor. Knowing that, he placed 2 of them. What he did not know was that the peasants are lazy. Without his attention, they would not work, so he kept his eyes on them, while King Baldwin kept his eyes on Mr. Vizier. It was weird for him, but he kept his composure and focused on his work. He also learned that he could rotate his gaze, which was interesting. Next on his agenda was food. For that, he built a small wheat farm. The wooden walls offered good protection, but the outpost needed men willing to die in the name of their king and Mr. Vizier. The only option he had was more peasants. Disappointing, yet they only asked for wheat for their service. Due to logistics, bureaucracy, and other vague reasons, he could only deploy a limited number of soldiers. This he didn't like. He was distracted by the peasants appearing in front of the walls. He watched them walk around aimlessly and questioned if he had done the right thing. It was at that point he saw how low the wood supply was. He thought 2 wells were a bit excessive, yet he had more space at his disposal, so he planted a tree. Yes, only 1 tree. The mental load of that tree placement decision was such a heavy burden that he didn't even notice the attack of a single goblin bandit. What a lunatic, he thought. As a reward for defeating him, he received blueprints for a market. The counselor duck guy had to mention the obvious: gold doesn't grow on trees. The market required a lot of wood to be built, so he patiently waited. The outpost wasn't producing much, and the only thing he could sell was wheat at a 1-to-1 ratio, which he thought was a great deal. Around week 25, he began to see issues with his outpost planning, and the approaching group of wallbusters didn't ease his mind either. He wasn't sure how the defenses were going to hold up. These wallbusters looked massive, and their hit points reflected that. At some point, he realized they were ignoring the soldiers and aggressively walking towards the walls. He was panicking. In true terrorist style, they detonated themselves in front of the walls, leaving only a dent in the outpost's defenses. "Lunatics!" he cried. Everything was fine again. He focused on economy and for the first time placed an iron mine. On week 37, he scouted the incoming goblin forces. They did not intimidate him. The reward for defeating them was very exciting. A single spell. He wondered what it could be. To his surprise, they made quick work of his peasant soldiers. He quickly turned his gaze to bolster peasant production. The battlefield required more men to die. It was a great lesson in how goblins fought. They were so fixated on damaging the walls that they neither noticed nor attacked his peasants on the battlefield. He thought this tactic could prove useful in the future. Mr. Vizier had 2 options for a spell. He didn't think he needed more wood, so the choice was clear. He needed some terrorists on his side. They were called the Bursting Bunch. Around week 50, he was ready to produce some ranged units. They were going to deal damage from afar with their arrows while watching their neighbors die, all the while hoping the enemy wouldn't come near them. A funny thought, given the circumstances. A prophecy. Only the ancients know why this woman, whose face was being deliberately blocked by the Counselor Duck Guy, was telling him that he could weave his own fate. What he could do was limited, but nevertheless, it was exciting to decide what the upcoming waves of enemies were going to be. He didn't know what to expect. When he saw that goblin riding a pig, he believed it was the right time to cast that one spell he had. The explosion made him smile. In the heat of battle, the Counselor Duck Guy kept bothering him with management topics, like how he could send his troops to barracks in order to make space for better units on the battlefield. The wave was defeated and a trader made it to the outpost. To no one's surprise, the Counselor Duck Guy was again standing in front of the trader's face. In return, Mr. Vizier ignored his suggestion. Duck Guy had to learn some manners. He checked the inventory and was excited to see some spells. Since he had a good experience with the Bursting Bunch, he wanted to try summoning some infernals. Trading is mandatory for a kingdom to thrive, and there were some charismatic traders available. The morale they would provide sounded very interesting. After some thought, Mr. Vizier could not decide, and he let them go. The charismatic traders, though, really wanted to stay. The Counselor Duck Guy had some valuable lessons on building space management. Destroying a building didn't refund the costs, but they could be rebuilt, so they weren't lost. Later, Mr. Vizier decided to build a militia camp. It was supposed to produce brigades or militia units. He wasn't sure which. Whatever came out of that building, he taught, was better than his peasants. Another spell, TNT barrels. More explosions would deter and discourage his enemies. On week 78, the final wave was incoming. Tensions rose in the outpost, yet it was only 4 goblins. Seeing this, Mr. Vizier was certain that the victory was at hand. Then it was finally time to go back to the kingdom and prepare for the next journey.